In the world of Naruto, the Uchiha clan are known by all and they're feared by many, but when it comes to Itachi Uchiha, fear is an absolute understatement. Between the ages of 12 and 13 years old, Itachi had already gained a reputation as a former Anbu captain who slaughtered the Uchiha clan, joined the Akatsuki, and made child's play out of one of the legendary Sannin. As we would learn in Naruto Volume 43, Itachi wasn't evil like many people suspected, but instead he was actually a hero who protected Konoha from the shadows and had taken measures so that after his death he could continue to protect the village. However, what if this wasn't the case? What if Itachi had actually been evil? How would the Naruto story change? Would things end up for better or would they end up for worse? In today's edition of Naruto What If, we're going to look at just that scenario. In order for this to happen, we must first establish a trigger point, and for this scenario we have two different roads that could have been taken for this to occur. Road number one is that somewhere between the 5 years between Itachi's slaughter in the Uchiha clan and Itachi showing up after Hiruzen's death, Itachi would have given in to Obito's talk no jutsu throughout the years and became evil. Road number two is that on the night of the Uchiha massacre, a mentally fragile Itachi snaps after realizing how far he'd gone to protect the village, especially after Danzu's Anbu attempted to kill Itachi. In my opinion, while option number one does have a lot of potential, I believe option number two is where there's the most room for conflict. If we go back to the events of the Uchiha massacre, after Itachi killed his lover Izumi Uchiha, he killed his parents and he ran away with tears in his eyes from Sasuke. Itachi in the anime version of the story stood on top of one of the buildings at the Uchiha compound and he collapsed to the ground in grief before going to meet with Hiruzen. In this video, we're going to assume that when Itachi's former Anbu subordinates tried to kill him after his meeting with Hiruzen, after Itachi says he's not sure which side he was actually double agent for, the Uchiha's curse of hatred would consume Itachi. Here, he just slaughtered his clan for the village, only to be betrayed by that very same village. Fueled by rage, Itachi would make a detour before he left the village for good. He'd go back to the Uchiha compound and to the dead body of his father Fugaku Uchiha, and he would take his eyes. This changes everything because when Itachi reaches the rendezvous point with Obito to join the Akatsuki, he'd have Fugaku's eyes stored away, and once everything settled down, he'd transplant Fugaku's eyes into his own, giving him the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan since Fugaku had a Mangekyo and he would qualify as being a close relative. To understand how huge this is, we have to look at a few things, from the way that chakra works for the Uchiha clan to the strength of healthy Itachi to how strong a theoretical EMS Itachi would be. As we know from the manga, the more hatred that an Uchiha feels, the stronger the chakra becomes and the more refined their Sharingan becomes, and this is the basic Sharingan. This isn't even the Mangekyo Sharingan. Between the manga, the anime, Naruto Databook 4, and the light novels, we have a very good idea on how strong healthy Itachi was. In the Itachi Book of Midnight novel, just before he got the Mangekyo, Itachi had finally surpassed Shisui in power. The Akatsuki Hiden novel, set during the time when Itachi was still healthy and a member of the Akatsuki, Itachi was significantly stronger than Kisame by a large amount, which shows that he grew more powerful during his time in the Akatsuki. In the Sasuke Jinraiden novel, which I'm covering here on the channel from start to finish, it directly states that a sick Itachi was still stronger than Mangekyo Sharingan Sasuke by Sasuke's own admittance, though Sasuke's skill with the Amaterasu had greatly surpassed Itachi's. But that's due to Sasuke's Mangekyo Sharingan ability being flame controlled. That being said, there's evidence to back this up as well, given Sasuke was overwhelmed by Killer Bee, yet Edo Itachi, who wasn't at full power due to the nature of how Edo Tensei works, he was able to get the drop on Bee more than once during the fight, and he kept up with KCM2 Naruto, the same one who blitzed the Raikage, and was strong enough to deflect a pissed off EMS Sasuke Susanoo. Now that we've established that, healthy Itachi would be somewhere between KCM1 Naruto and EMS Sasuke in the original timeline. The Itachi in this alternative timeline would start out at that same level, but when you factor in the Uchiha clan's hatred amp, he'd be even stronger. Then when you factor in the huge boost in power that an Uchiha gains when they get the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Itachi would be more than strong enough to shift the balance in power in the Akatsuki. As a reminder, Sasuke before the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan barely kept up with Bee and was flat out told that he was weaker than Sage Mode Naruto, to being amped up enough with this EMS that he could track and react to attacks from Ten Tails Obito. In this timeline, when Orochimaru tries to take his body, Itachi would just kill him with this genjutsu the same way he killed Izumi during the massacre, which we know from the Itachi Book of Midnight novel, and by Kakashi's own words in the manga that if Itachi wanted to, he could kill with genjutsu. Word of Itachi killing Orochimaru would likely reach Jiraiya. Since Jiraiya was keeping tabs on Orochimaru, he likely tell Hiruzen what happened, but still be very wary of Itachi, especially since he doesn't know the truth about Itachi. At this point, Obito would have to make a decision. Itachi would be too strong for Orange Mask Obito or Nagato's 6 paths to keep in check. Itachi becomes an even bigger problem when you factor in he has Shisui's eye inside of a crow that he could use as a last option to take control of Obito or Nagato if a fight were to break out. Evil Itachi has no reason to go along with Obito's plans or to follow Nagato if he ever gets the idea that he's stronger than either one of them. If Itachi ever found out the weakness of Kamui like Konan and Minato and Kakashi did, he'd definitely kill Obito, and he'd eventually find a way to Nagato, kill him, and take his Rinnegan, which makes him unstoppable. And if he thought the idea of sealing the Biju away was something that made sense, then we can just go ahead and end the video here. However, for as cool as that sounds, I do believe we have enough from the manga to conclude that Obito was extremely careful to not use Kamui around Itachi after the Uchiha massacre, because he was worried that if Itachi found out the weakness of his jutsu, just like Konan, Minato, and Kakashi did, Obito could have been stopped. In fact, Obito directly states that if Itachi knew his weakness, Itachi would have killed him. So I think Itachi not figuring out Obito's weakness would keep him from making a move, and by waiting to make a move, that pesky illness would show up and plague Itachi. We know from the Sasuke Jinraiden novel as well as from the manga that Itachi's illness robbed him of not just his stamina but a great deal of his power and speed as well, especially when his medications are factored in. This sick EMS Itachi wouldn't be as strong as he was previously, but he'd still be as strong or slightly weaker than EMS Sasuke from the war. At this point, the changes to the timeline are pretty huge. Orochimaru being dead in this timeline means the Sand Village has no one to talk them into attacking Konoha. Though they might be planning it, they won't act on it as quickly, which means that the Chunin exams continue without interruption. I'll leave it to you guys to discuss who's going to win the Chunin exams tournament in this timeline, but where things get very interesting is in the aftermath. Hiruzen is technically still alive since Orochimaru's never there to kill him. Originally, Itachi came back to Konoha to remind the elders that Hiruzen's death changed nothing when it came to Sasuke being off limits, but now this is where things get interesting. If we assume that Jiraiya still comes to Konoha to tell Kakashi to train Sasuke to master his Sharingan, and Jiraiya says that he'll take over Naruto's training, we have a timeline change that occurs here. Hiruzen will likely sign off on this, having his favorite student train the 4th Hokage's son to master the Nine Tails, while also having Kakashi train Sasuke to master the Sharingan would be something Hiruzen would likely want to see as a way to strengthen Konoha. Regardless as to what happens to Sakura, it's likely she gets reassigned to a new team of academy students who graduate later on. In this timeline, no Hiruzen dying means that there isn't a need to track down Tsunade to become the 5th Hokage, and the only thing that would take time is bringing Hiruzen up to speed about the news about the Akatsuki splitting up to hunt down the Biju, but that's a quick conversation. I believe given how huge of a buzz that Sasuke being in the exams was, there's a chance Itachi would be in the Land of Fire, but there's equally as good if not a greater chance he's there solely to capture Naruto, since Itachi was tasked with capturing the Nine Tails, and unlike the other Akatsuki, there was no need to investigate to learn the identity of the jinchuuriki that they were hunting because Itachi already knew it. This isn't that far-fetched either, because we know that the Akatsuki were already breaking up to look for the Biju during this time, and during the 2.5-year time skip, they almost broke the Gidomazu statue by sealing 2 Biju inside of it because they didn't know that they had to seal the Biju in order. This means Naruto's a target, but where things get darker is if Asuma and Kurenai try to fight Itachi and Kisame. If Kakashi spots Itachi and has those two tell Itachi, things do not end well. Kurenai is killed by Itachi via genjutsu, and Itachi just watches Asuma get toyed with by Kisame. If Itachi wants to kill Asuma quickly because Kisame's dragging out the fight, then Asuma's dead as well, but if he decides to watch, then Kakashi has enough time to show up. At this point, Asuma will close his eyes, and less than a second later, Kakashi will drop dead after being killed by Itachi's genjutsu, because unlike the original timeline where Itachi stopped short of killing Kakashi by Kakashi's own words, Itachi would do just that. Assuming Itachi doesn't rush Asuma and kill him or shoot off Amaterasu to kill him, Might Guy would show up enraged at the death of Kakashi. At this point, Itachi would actually pause here. While he'd be as strong or slightly weaker than EMS Sasuke from the war, Itachi would know that Might Guy is a master of the 8 inner gates. While this version of Might Guy would not be as strong as the one that we saw fight against Kisame and basically kill Kisame with the 7th gate, let alone be anywhere near as strong as the Might Guy we saw in the war, simply due to the fact that Guy trains every day, and not having 3 years worth of training is going to make him considerably weaker during this part of the timeline. If he goes 8th gate here, he's not as strong as 8th gate Guy that you saw in the war. I believe Itachi would weigh his options here. Could he just bust out a perfect Susanoo and take his chances fighting against 8th gate Guy if it came to it? Perhaps. Tosca Blade to seal an enemy, Yatamir to reflect chakra based attacks, and stack the perfect Susanoo on top of all that. That's a hell of a power up. But honestly, between EMS Itachi and Kisame, I think they could kill Guy before it even gets to that point. However, I still believe Itachi would choose to put off drawing any more attention and flee, likely making an opening by using an exploding shadow clone or setting Asuma on fire with the Amaterasu and then just running. Insurrection style tactics to hunt down Naruto would essentially be in effect. The two of them would regroup and gather more info on where Naruto was heading with Jiraiya. Since Kakashi, Asuma, and Kurenai would all be dead, it would be hard to contain that news, which makes it likely that somebody slips up and says something around Sasuke about Itachi, which sets Sasuke off on a search for Itachi before Hiruzen is pressured to do what Tsunade did during the Akatsuki suppression arc, which is send out teams looking for the Akatsuki duo. However, it'd all be too little too late. Itachi and Kisame would track down Jiraiya and Naruto very quickly. In the original timeline, Itachi spoke that nonsense of he and Kisame only being strong enough to stalemate Jiraiya, which we know was only due to the fact that Itachi was a spy. Itachi and Kisame would corner the two when they walk on some empty back road in the country. Kisame would use Samihada to eat up Naruto's chakra if he tries to attack. If Jiraiya tells Naruto to run, Kisame would go through with this threat to cut Naruto's legs off to prevent him from running away. Itachi, if he doesn't kill Jiraiya right away with the Genjutsu, would have no problem killing Jiraiya, sage mode or no sage mode. As Kisame throws Naruto over his shoulders, if Sasuke manages to track down the duo by following Naruto, Itachi doesn't hold back this time and he breaks Sasuke's arm when he tries to use the Chidori. Itachi then snaps Sasuke's neck and he grabs Sasuke's Sharingan because one can never have too many Sharingan. However, given that Zetsu is likely monitoring the situation, he very likely alerts Obito to Kakashi's death, and Obito slips into Konoha and takes Kakashi's eye before it can be sealed or destroyed or added to Danzo's collection, since Danzo wouldn't be able to take the eye until there's a full autopsy done on Kakashi's body, which gives Obito more than enough room to take the eye. This means that Obito now has this double Mangekyo Sharingan, which makes Obito more dangerous than Itachi. At this point, the story gets a lot darker. If we assume that the Akatsuki tried to extract the Nine Tails and seal it away, if it doesn't shatter the Gidomazu statue right away, I believe that Nagato would have to stop the sealing short, and the Akatsuki would learn much sooner that they need to seal away the Biju in order. This means Naruto's left chained up without any legs because Kisame cut off his legs in this timeline, with sealing tags placed on Naruto's body to contain his chakra, and he never knows the taste of Ichiraku ramen ever again. Assuming it still takes 2.5 years to learn the names and the location of the other Biju, the Akatsuki would still round them up pretty easily, and based off the Akatsuki Hiden novel and the anime and the manga, we have an idea of which Akatsuki members are meant to capture which Biju. However, that's irrelevant because the Akatsuki would have no issues capturing the Biju, especially since Hiruzen isn't like Tsunade. He's not making alliances, so there's no communications between villages, and it's possible that Zetsu sent out for appearance's sake to capture B, but in reality it's Obito who does it, and in no universe is Killer B beating Obito with both Mangekyo Sharingan, and Obito isn't the type to fall for the trick that he pulled on Sasuke and Momoshiki by cutting off his tentacle at the last second in order to stay alive. After B has the 8 tails extracted from him, Naruto be dragged in front of the Gidomazu statue, and due to him having no legs, the expression being dragged, kicking and screaming wouldn't apply here, and Naruto proceed to have Kurama ripped out of his body. This leads to another issue. Given Nagato's upon, whatever method that was planned to force him to revive Madara would be at play here. Madara would be revived. He'd take back the Rinnegan out of Nagato's eye sockets, and he and DMS Obito would begin to kill the Akatsuki if they stood up against him. If Madara sees EMS Itachi as being worthy of joining him, he might extend him an offer, but given that Itachi at this point in the timeline is already nearing the end of his natural life, Madara might give him a mercy kill by having a Limbo clone rip out his soul and kill him just like he did all the other Akatsuki members before Itachi can summon a crow that Shisui's eye can cast Koto Matsukami on Madara, which, as a side note, there's nothing stating that ocular genjutsu can't work on a Rinnegan user, but that's irrelevant because Itachi's killed before he can even get the crow summoned and cast the genjutsu, at which point, after the Infinite Tsukuyomi's casted, Zetsu would betray Madara and Kaguya would be revived. Evil Itachi can go a few different ways depending on if you believe that he overthrows the Akatsuki and takes the Rinnegan for himself. If he does, then Itachi pretty much fucks the ninja world for as long as he wants to. Things turn out on a happier note if Itachi's taught no jutsu by Obito during the 5 years. However, if you want a happier ending to a What If, click here to watch the What If you see on the screen, or click here to watch the entire What If playlist where I have almost 60 What Ifs on them, and not all of them end with Kaguya winning.